before God. Obviously, he walked before God and was perfect. And the book tell you that the law of the Lord is perfect. So obviously, he was keeping the law. Now let's go to Psalm 51. Let's go to Psalms 51, and we're going to start at verse 1. Psalms 51 and verse 1. You got to have more than faith. You got to have faith, but then you got to have works. That's why James will tell you, look, faith without works is dead. He said, I'll show you my faith by my works. Let's go to Psalms 51 and verse 1. When you get it, brother, go ahead.
Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness, according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity and cleanse me from my sin.
So now he's asking the Lord to please. He said, have mercy, blot out my transgressions, and wash me from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Because if you're a true servant of God, when you sin, you truly are hurt because you know you transgressed against mercy, because you know you're going to have to pay. So he's telling him, look, wash me and cleanse me from my sin. Go ahead.
For I acknowledge my transgression.
And a real servant of God is not going to act like they perfect. They're going to acknowledge their transgressions. Go ahead.
And my sin is ever before me.
Go ahead.
Against thee only have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight, that thou mightest be justified when thou spakest, and be clear when thou judgest.
Skip down to verse 16.
For thou desirest not sacrifices, else would I give it.
Now wait a minute. He said, for thou desirest not sacrifices, else would I have given it. But then we know at this time they were still killing bulls and goats. But what people don't understand is the Lord have always wanted obedience and not sacrifice. He wanted you to obey his voice more than he wanted you to kill some animals because you don't want to stop sinning. He said, look, you don't desire sacrifice because I would have gave you one. Go ahead.
Thou delightest not in burnt offerings.
And he said, thou delightest not in burnt offerings. Look, that's been going on for a long time. The Lord, for a long time, didn't even want to deal with, didn't even want them bringing them more sacrifices and offering to him because they didn't repent. They used that as a crutch to keep sinning. And the Lord got tired of it. Now let's go to Jeremiah 7 and 21. Jeremiah 7 and 21. Because the Lord is going to tell Israel something here. And he's going to let them know what it is that he always required of them. Jeremiah 7 and 21. Go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, put your burnt offerings into your sacrifices and eat flesh. For I spake not unto your fathers, nor commanded them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. But this thing I commanded them, saying, obey my voice.
And that is what the Lord wanted. He didn't want all them sacrifices. He said, look, man, all I wanted you to do was obey my voice, not sacrifice. Go ahead.
And I will be your God, and ye shall be my people. Walk ye in all the ways that I've commanded you, that it may be well with you.
Didn't he tell him, I set before you life and death, good and evil? And he set those commandments out.
That's right.
Go ahead.
But they hearken not, nor incline their ear.
But like we doing now, they don't want to hear nothing about no commandments. Don't want to hear it. Tell me something else, but I don't want to hear nothing about that. Go ahead.
But walked in the counsels and in the imaginations of their evil heart.
And that is what we've come to again. Everybody does what's right in their own eyes. Everybody walks in the imagination of their own heart. And a lot of what we think is evil. Go ahead.
And went backward and not forward.
And they went backward and not forward. Now let's go to Hosea 6 and 4. Hosea 6 and 4. Because the Lord have always wanted obedience. Always. And we being taught, even though there is no animal sacrifice, people still act like there is. Because they love to say, God understands. The Lord know my heart. Always looking for some kind of loophole to why you ain't got to keep the law. Why you don't have to stop fornicating and committing adultery. Why you don't have to stop lying, because God know your heart and understand. That's that same stuff the people was doing back then. But the way they was doing it was bringing up continually bulls and goats. Continually. For the same stuff that they ain't repent of the first time they did it. That's the same stuff. You just ain't got no bulls and goats to bring up. But you're still doing the same thing, talking about how God understands. He do understand. And that's where the big problem is. Because the book tells you we got a high priest that was, he felt the same thing we felt. Because he was a flesh and blood man. He came in the flesh. So he knows exactly what you're going through. And that's why you can't pull one over on him. He was tempted like you were tempted. And like I'm tempted. So you can do it. Hosea 6 and verse 4. Go ahead.
O Ephraim, what shall I do unto thee? O Judah, what shall I do unto thee? For your goodness is as a morning cloud, and as the early dew if go away. Therefore have I used them by the prophets, I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. For if I desire mercy and not sacrifice.
He said, for I desired mercy and not sacrifice. He's telling them again, I desired mercy and not sacrifice. Go ahead.
And the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings.
He desired them people to walk in knowledge. And he told them in Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy 4, that those commandments will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. He said, I desired the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. People don't even understand. The Lord wants you to be knowledgeable of him and knowledgeable of his plan. Otherwise, why would he have it written in a book and translated? He said, I desired mercy, not sacrifice, and I desired the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. He wanted them to walk in knowledge and understanding. But they just wouldn't do it. Let's go to Hosea 8 and verse 11. Hosea 8 and verse 11. When you get it, brother, go ahead.
Because Ephraim have made many altars to sin, altars shall be unto him to sin.
And that is what Ephraim did. This is talking about Israel. They have made many altars unto sin. Go ahead.
I have written to him the great things of my law.
He said, I have written to him the great things of my law. But go ahead.
But they were counted as a strange thing.
And they were counted as a strange thing. And when you start talking about the law, people look at you like you strange. Because they have not been taught the law. So they think, man, you know, you kind of freak or something. They look at you funny. I had a guy almost didn't want to talk to me no more. He got a woman at home, but he want me to go talk to some other woman on his behalf, and I wouldn't do it. And he got offended. But I can't do that. You got somebody. I ain't finna go and be a partaker of your adultery. I ain't gonna do it. If you want to go do it, you go talk yourself. But I'm not gonna talk for you. He got offended because the law is a strange thing. What verse was that?
We just finished 12.
Go ahead, 13.
They sacrifice flesh for sacrifices of mine offerings and eat it, but the Lord accepteth them not.
He said, look, they sacrifice flesh for the sacrifices of mine offerings and they eat it. He said, but I ain't accepting it. Go ahead.
Now will he remember their iniquity and visit their sins, they shall return to Egypt.
He said, yeah, you go ahead and sacrifice, but you done messed up. He said, because I ain't accepting it. He said, now I'm going to remember your iniquity. No matter how many bulls and goats you bring up to me now, I'm going to remember this, and you're going to return into captivity. That is what Egypt is talking about in this case. It's talking about them returning into slavery. But the sacrifices of bulls and goats couldn't help them. They refused to keep the law. They counted it as a strange thing. Let's go to